Television's most shocking confrontation erupted last night when Ben Affleck walked off the set of The Late Show after Stephen Colbert's increasingly hostile questioning crossed a line. What began as routine promotional banter devolved into personal attacks that left audiences stunned and industry insiders questioning Colbert's future. The tension was palpable from the moment Ben Affleck walked onto The Late Show set. The acclaimed actor and director had arrived to promote his latest directorial project, but the standard late-night charm offensive quickly unraveled. Colbert, who appeared unusually agitated before the segment even began, greeted Affleck with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "So, Ben Affleck is here," Colbert announced to his audience, his tone carrying an unmistakable edge. "Hollywood's a comeback kid. Again. How many comebacks is this now, Ben? I've lost count." The audience's laughter faltered as Affleck shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Known for his ability to navigate difficult interviews with self-deprecating humor, Affleck attempted to deflect with a smile. "Well, Stephen, that's the business, right? You're only as good as your last project, and I've been fortunate enough to—" "Fortunate is one word for it," Colbert interrupted, leaning forward. "Some might say privileged. Let's talk about that privilege in Hollywood, shall we? The way certain people keep getting chances while others don't." The camera caught Affleck's expression hardening as he realized this wasn't going to be the standard promotional interview he'd prepared for. Behind the scenes, producers could be seen frantically conferring just off camera, clearly concerned about Colbert's unusually aggressive approach. "I work hard for every project," Affleck responded carefully. "Everyone in this industry knows there are no guarantees." Colbert's smile turned cold. "Is that why you've been so vocal about protecting the old guard in Hollywood? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've benefited quite nicely from a system that picks winners and losers based on factors that have nothing to do with talent." The audience fell silent, the uncomfortable tension spreading through the studio. A camera panned to show Affleck's publicist standing tensely at the edge of the set, phone in hand. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Stephen," Affleck said, his voice level but with an undercurrent of steel. "If you have something specific you want to ask me, why don't you just ask it directly?" Colbert's demeanor shifted again as he shuffled his note cards. "Let's talk about your new film, then. Another story where you play both savior and martyr. Do you ever worry about being typecast as Hollywood's white knight?" The racial undertone was unmistakable, and a murmur ran through the audience. Affleck's jaw tightened visibly. "My character is complex, as are all the characters in this film. If you'd seen it—" "Oh, I saw it," Colbert cut in. 3 hours of my life I won't get back. But you know what struck me? How eerily similar your character's redemption arc is to the narrative you've crafted for yourself in the media. Art imitating life, or just convenient PR? A producer stepped closer to the stage, making a cutting motion with his hand that Colbert pointedly ignored. The tension in the studio had become electric, with audience members exchanging uncomfortable glances. "Stephen," Affleck said quietly, "I came here to talk about a film that hundreds of people worked incredibly hard on. Not to be ambushed with whatever personal issue you seem to have with me." "Personal?" Colbert laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. "No, this is professional. This is about accountability in an industry that's supposedly cleaning house, but still protects certain names. Your name being one of them." The implication hung in the air. Affleck's expression darkened dangerously. "That's a serious allegation to make on national television," he said. "Especially without being specific about what you're accusing me of." Colbert leaned back in his chair, a picture of calculated casualness that contrasted with the escalating tension. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking why some stories get buried while others don't." The control room was now in visible chaos, with the executive producer furiously signaling to cut to commercial. But Colbert wasn't finished. "Let's talk about your foundation work," Colbert pivoted sharply. "Very noble, very public. The timing, of your biggest charitable announcements is fascinating when mapped against certain, let's call them PR challenges. Affleck set his water glass down with such controlled precision, it was clear he was fighting to maintain his composure. The studio had gone deathly quiet, the audience frozen in collective discomfort. "You know what, Stephen?" Affleck said, his voice unnervingly calm. "I've respected your work for years. I thought you were better than this kind of tabloid ambush." Colbert's eyes glinted with something that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. "Is that your way of avoiding the question?" The tension between the two men had become almost unbearable. Affleck's publicist was now on the phone, speaking urgently, while a network executive had appeared at the edge of the set. "There wasn't a question," Affleck responded. "There was an insinuation, and I think we both know what you're doing here." Colbert smiled thinly. "Enlighten me, Ben. What exactly am I doing?" Affleck leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet that forced everyone in the studio to strain to hear him. "You're manufacturing controversy at my expense because your ratings have been slipping for months. This isn't journalism, Stephen. It's desperation." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Colbert's smile vanished, replaced by a flash of genuine anger. "That's rich coming from someone who's spent a career crafting careful public narratives," Colbert shot back. "Maybe the audience deserves to see something real for once." The floor director was now frantically signaling for a commercial break, but Colbert waved him off with an imperious flick of his wrist. The network executive had pulled out his phone, likely calling higher management. "Real?" Affleck repeated, incredulity breaking through his controlled facade. "You want real? Fine. I came here as a professional courtesy because that's how this works. You promote your show, I promote my film. Instead, you've turned this into some kind of public trial, based on vague accusations you don't even have the courage to state directly." Colbert adjusted his glasses, a nervous tic that betrayed his recognition that the interview had veered into dangerous territory. But rather than pulling back, he doubled down. "The courage? That's interesting coming from you." Colbert picked up a blue folder that had been sitting on his desk. "I have here some very interesting accounts from crew members on your last 3 films. Want to comment on those?" The blood drained from Affleck's face, then rushed back in a tide of fury. "Those are confidential HR documents. If you have them, they were obtained illegally." "So you admit there are HR complaints?" Colbert pounced, his expression triumphant. "That's not what I said, and you know it." Affleck's voice had gone deadly quiet. "Every production has standard HR processes, but what you're suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Colbert interrupted again. "I'm asking questions your publicist has managed to keep the rest of the media from asking. That's my job." "Your job?" Affleck's laugh was hollow. "Your job is to entertain. When did you decide you were some kind of moral arbiter? When did punching down at guests become your brand?" The audience, initially frozen in shock, had begun to murmur. Several people were recording the confrontation on their phones despite the strict no-recording policy. The confrontation had transcended normal talk show territory and entered a realm of uncomfortable reality rarely seen on network television. Colbert's face flushed. "Punching down? You're Ben Affleck. You're hardly a victim here. Everyone's a potential victim of character assassination, Stephen. Even me." Affleck glanced at his watch. "We have about 30 seconds before your producers finally override your ego and cut to commercial. So let me be very clear. If you air any of those documents you're waving around, my lawyers will be in touch before your head hits the pillow. Tonight." The threat hung in the air like a thundercloud. Colbert's expression flickered between defiance and uncertainty. "Are you threatening me on my own show?" he finally asked. "No, I'm promising you consequences for potentially illegal actions." "There's a difference." Affleck's composure had returned, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface. "Now, do you have any actual questions about the film? or should I save us both some time and leave? The standoff between the two men had become electric. The audience was completely silent now, witnessing something raw and unscripted in an environment usually carefully controlled. "Let's talk about the theme of accountability in your film," Colbert said, attempting to regain control. "Your character faces a reckoning for past misdeeds. Did that resonate with you personally?" The implication was unmistakable, and Affleck's expression hardened once more. "Every character I play teaches me something," he replied carefully. "What I find interesting is your fixation on conflating fictional characters with the actors who portray them. That says more about you than it does about me." Colbert's smile returned, but it was strained. "Does it? Or does it say something about an industry built on illusion trying to maintain that illusion at all costs?" "There it is again," Affleck said, shaking his head. "More insinuation without specifics. You know, I expected better from you, Stephen. You used to stand for something. What happened to the guy who spoke truth to power?" "That's exactly what I'm doing right now," Colbert retorted. "No," Affleck said firmly. "You're punching at an easy target because it's safer than addressing the real power structures. You've become what you used to satirize." The barb struck home. Colbert's face flushed deeper, and for a moment he seemed at a loss for words. A rarity for the veteran host. The executive producer had finally had enough. He stepped onto the edge of the set and made a slashing motion across his throat. The on-air light blinked, signaling they were going to commercial whether Colbert liked it or not. "We'll be right back after these messages," Colbert said mechanically, his eyes never leaving Affleck's. The moment the cameras cut, Affleck stood up, already removing his microphone. "We're done here." "Sit down," Colbert hissed, standing as well. "You don't walk off my show." "Watch me," Affleck replied, his voice carrying even as technicians rushed to mute his mic. The audience watched in stunned silence as the confrontation continued off-air, their voices now raised enough that the front rows could hear fragments of their heated exchange. "You've crossed a line," Affleck said, tossing his microphone onto the chair. "The public has a right to know," Colbert began. "The public has a right to the truth, not your twisted version of it," Affleck cut him off. The production assistant who had been hovering nearby stepped between them, her face pale but determined. "Mr. Affleck, your publicist is waiting in the green room." "I'll be right there," Affleck replied, his eyes never leaving Colbert's face. "We're not done." The studio audience remained frozen in their seats, many recording surreptitiously despite repeated warnings from staff. The confrontation had morphed into something unprecedented in late-night television history. Colbert adjusted his tie, visibly struggling to regain his composure. "If you leave now, you're only confirming what people already suspect." Affleck laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "That's your play? Try to shame me into staying? I've been in this business long enough to recognize a hatchet job when I see one." The network executive who had been watching from the sidelines finally intervened, stepping between the two men. "That's enough. Both of you." "Tell that to your host," Affleck retorted. "He's the one who turned a promotional interview into an ambush." The studio had become eerily quiet, the usual bustle of a commercial break replaced by tense stillness as crew members watched the confrontation unfold. In the control room visible through the glass partition, producers were frantically conferring, clearly trying to decide how to salvage the remainder of the show. "30 seconds to air," called the floor director, his voice strained. Colbert turned to the executive. "He stays, or I walk." The ultimatum hung in the air like a live grenade. The executive's face paled. "Stephen, you can't—" "Watch me," Colbert snapped, echoing Affleck's earlier challenge. Affleck shook his head, a look of genuine pity crossing his face. "This is what you've become? Threatening your own network because a guest won't sit still. For your character assassination?" "10 seconds," called the floor director. "Make your choice," Colbert said to the executive, ignoring Affleck completely now. The executive looked between them, years of network television experience offering no precedent for this situation. "We're going to extend the commercial break," he finally said. "You two, my office now." "No," Affleck said simply. "I'm done. Air whatever you want from that first segment. My lawyers will be in touch." He turned to leave, but Colbert grabbed his arm. "Running away doesn't look good, Ben. What are you afraid of?" The touch was the final transgression. Affleck pulled his arm free with controlled force. "Don't ever put your hands on me again." Each word was delivered with icy precision. The few audience members close enough to hear gasped audibly. A security guard moved forward uncertainly, clearly unsure which man he should be restraining. "Let him go," the executive ordered Colbert, his voice leaving no room for argument. Colbert released Affleck's arm but maintained eye contact. "The truth always comes out eventually, Ben. One way or another." "I couldn't agree more," Affleck replied, his voice steady. Then, addressing the executive, "I expect that segment will not air in its current form. I also expect a public apology from both the network and Mr. Colbert for this unprofessional conduct." "You'll get nothing from me," Colbert retorted. The executive shot Colbert a warning look before turning back to Affleck. "Mr. Affleck, we deeply regret how this interview deteriorated. Please, if we could discuss this privately—" "There's nothing to discuss," Affleck cut him off. "My terms are clear." With that, he turned and walked off the set, his back straight and his pace unhurried despite the chaos erupting around him. Behind him, Colbert turned to the executive. "If you cave to him, I walk, permanently." The live feed in the studio showed the network had extended the commercial break, replacing it with an emergency rerun of a previous segment. The audience members were now openly recording the backstage drama, despite staff attempting to herd them away from the confrontation. "Get back on air," the executive ordered Colbert. "Salvage what you can. We'll discuss this later." "So you're choosing him," Colbert said incredulously. "I'm choosing to save this show from a lawsuit that could end it entirely," the executive replied harshly. "Now get back on air." As Affleck reached the exit, his publicist appeared, face ashen. "What happened out there? It's already all over social media." "Exactly what he wanted," Affleck replied grimly. "Controversy at any cost." In the hallway they passed a wall of monitors showing various feeds. One displayed the studio where Colbert had returned to his desk, his smile fixed and brittle, as the floor director counted him back in from the extended break. "And we're back," Colbert announced to the camera, his voice overly bright. Unfortunately, Ben Affleck had to leave unexpectedly. But the show must go on. By morning, the confrontation had exploded across every social media platform and news outlet. Unedited audience recordings showed the full extent of Colbert's ambush and Affleck's dignified exit. The network's damage control efforts were undermined by their own staff leaking details of what transpired during the commercial break. By noon, Colbert's ratings had plummeted as viewers and former celebrity guests condemned his tactics. By evening, the network had issued a formal apology to Affleck and announced that Colbert would be taking an unplanned hiatus to reflect on the show's direction. 1 week later, as Ben Affleck sat down for an exclusive interview with a rival network, he was asked about the incident that had become known simply as the Colbert confrontation. "What happened that night wasn't just about me," Affleck responded thoughtfully. "It was a symptom of an entertainment culture that too often mistakes cruelty for truth-telling and sensationalism for substance. I hope we can all learn from it and do better." As the interview aired, Stephen Colbert watched from his Manhattan apartment, a letter of resignation sitting unsigned on his desk, while network executives debated his future in a crisis meeting across town. The Late Show incident had become more than a viral moment. It had sparked a national conversation about media ethics, the treatment of interview subjects, and the responsibility that comes with a platform, proving that even in the cutthroat world of entertainment, there are still lines that should never be crossed.